Welcome to AHA TV. My name is Melissa Matani and I am delighted to be joined here by Dr. Amit Khera and Joe Chikwe. So we are just wrapping up day one of scientific sessions in Philadelphia, and what a day it's been. Tell me, what has it been like for you, Joe?
It's been absolutely tremendous and really quite overwhelming to see the amount of buzz that started right out of the gates with the opening session. Amit, that was your baby.
Thank you for that. I think the buzz is so exciting because we went through COVID, and we all know these meetings, sort of all of the specialness of what meetings are, people forgot because they hadn't been. And I feel like it's back this year based on the energy, the amount of people, the interaction. This is so formative for people's careers, so important for science to do this, and it's great to see it alive and well again.
And I know that was very important to you in terms of making sure that people really felt like they had time to interconnect. And I know some of the sessions were purposefully longer because of that. And I feel like that really has been the case through everyone I've spoken to. And everyone I've spoken to has specifically told me how excited they were about your first session. Now, I don't know how you say it. In British English, we say semaglutide. I know I've been hearing from people here, it's semaglutide, but everybody was talking about that session. Tell me what your takeaways were.
Sure, I'm from Texas, so we say semaglutide, but that trial, we first it was the blockbuster. Everybody knew that, and that part we knew, but we really brought it around with two other talks. And to your point about discussion, we had 15-minute panel. We had 15 minutes of very bright people and lots of questions from the audience. So the key point was how to unpack this, which we knew was going to be a big study. So first and foremost, obesity is 2/3 of the population or more, and so this is front and center in people's minds. Here we have a therapy that is for cardiovascular disease without diabetes, that it lowered heart attacks and strokes, and it lowered death. That is a huge deal. I think the big conundrum or question in all the conversation now is, well, now what? In whom, when, how can we afford this? How does this work? What happens Monday morning in clinic with this information? But I think we have a new treatment option for cardiovascular disease involving obesity, and we have a lot to unpack what to do now.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's very exciting, but it is being billed as this kind of blockbuster drug. And I think I've heard from other people I've been speaking to today that there are other factors that you need to think about in terms of lifestyle. And I mean, Joe, did you learn any more from, do you agree with that?
I think that some of the things that were sort of drawn out in what Amit managed to engineer, which was a really thoughtful discussion. So let's just focus on that for a moment. It wasn't just being in the room with 5,000 people, and as the New York Times article dropped saying standing room only, 30 deep at the back. There was really in-depth discussion from the NIH population science. And one of the things that we brought out was really those curves separate out super early. So it's got to be about more than weight loss. What are the other mechanisms that are driving these differences in cardiovascular outcomes?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think that's exactly what we have to figure out now, because we're calling it obesity medicine, but clearly something was happening before we addressed the obesity. So there's some other biology here.
I've heard that's definitely been a big takeaway from today. What else happened today? What are some of your other big takeaways?
Well, I think the Orbit's a phenomenal trial. So this is almost like a response to ischemia. And, I'm very uncomfortable as a surgeon talking about pharmaceuticals, much more happy about in the interventional space. And Orbit is interesting because we've gone from ischemia, which kind of suggested that revascularization wasn't always the curative modality that we thought. And Orbit is a really interesting trial where they did a sham intervention in patients that were off anti-anginals and actually showed a pretty significant benefit compared to placebo. Take homes from that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Orbita 1, first, kudos to these investigators. They do these amazingly intricate studies with a sham, but they ask important questions. And I think, Orbita 1 people to take home was somehow maybe PCI doesn't work. And, they stepped back in this trial, did a very different study and showed us, no, it can definitely help for symptoms in patients with angina. So I thought it was really important.
And these are amazing trials. I mean, I think 4 today in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of which is MINT. So MINT is a trial that was looking at transfusion practice, restrictive versus liberal transfusion in patients with acute MI. And I think the investigators are sort of saying that it really supports a more liberal approach. I actually feel the results support a fairly restrictive approach. There's probably something for everyone in that study.
P-value 0.06. We'll be thinking about that for a long time. But to your point, I think this is practice informing for sure. And it gave us all something to think about because we finally have a study that large with transfusion that gave us some good important information.
And there were 4 late-breaking sessions today. Was there one that stood out to you in particular? I know you've just been talking about a couple of them, but was there one that surprised you?
Well, there was a lot of hypertension. I know you were going to mention maybe something that we saw in the heart failure space. You know, the end of the day was hypertension. We have another hypertension one coming. And I wouldn't say so much a surprise as, you know, hypertension affects half of the U.S. We're talking about obesity, but hypertension is half the adult U.S. population. And around the world, it's one of the #1 causes of cardiovascular death. So we haven't figured out hypertension, and we have a lot of work to do. You know, we saw today that hypertension lowering can reduce dementia risk. That's going to be huge in terms of people's understanding. Other things, and this seems, you know, almost at this point, we still debate salt and sodium, but I saw a very well-controlled trial clearly demonstrating when you reduce sodium intake, your blood pressure comes down, even if you're not hypertensive. So these types of things are very practical for people every day, especially with all the people that are, you know, afflicted by hypertension. I think you were looking at some of the heart failure session as well.
Yeah, there's been so much science. This is not something, unlike I can't actually store it all up in here. So I think two studies certainly sort of with a slightly more surgical bent that, again, super high impact. One, I want to say, I'm going to check that teammate, which was looking at lower doses of immunosuppression in children post-heart transplant. And then ours trying to look at the use of antithrombotic medications, and again, trying to reduce stroke risk in patients with LVADs, sort of HeartMate 3. So again, impactful, practice-informing trials.
And to your point, I mean, the thing what's different is we don't get a lot of well-done, you know, this is a well-done heart failure trial with a device that today, you know, maybe we drop the aspirin starting today in terms of that. And then the other, which one, we did this last year at AHA, 2, you know, pediatric trial last year, another huge pediatric trial. We don't get a lot of good data in pediatrics, and this was practice informing also. So I think those are really important studies.
It's been such an incredible day. I mean, there has been such a huge buzz here. It must be so nice for you as professionals to be at a conference where you're seeing so many other professionals that you haven't seen for a year, and you're all catching up and comparing notes. I mean, has there been a lot of progress that you feel has been made in the past year?
What do you think?
Well, I think some of the huge progress has been in the structural heart space and in the valve space. And one of the great things about AHA is that you don't just get the clinical studies in these blockbuster New England Journal of Medicine front page of New York Times. You actually get the basic science and the discovery and the innovation science that drives what we're going to be seeing in sort of 5-10 years time. So that's been fascinating. And right now the buzz out sort of in the sort of science areas, certainly in the structural spaces, why are we still looking at pericardium as an option for valve replacements? What's happening in materials, nanotechnology, materials science? So great sessions outside of the late breaking and the featured science.
You know, I want to pick up on that because there's sort of what's timely right now, right? And so cardiac arrest on the field, on the playing field, we've seen a lot of that this year, and everyone doesn't know what to do. So one of the other things about AHA, this convener, we're bringing in, there was a main event today on cardiac arrest on the field where they brought in literally some of the world's experts and sort of really helping us think through what are next steps, where do we need to be in this space that everyone's sort of swirling. So I think there's this convening and sort of an outcome for everyone to know what's next in terms of care. So we're seeing those as well, not just in the late breaker sessions, but in the main events.
I mean, it's been fascinating, and also fascinating to see how the conversations go from here to really revolutionize medicine for normal people like me in the future. So,
and not just medicine, maybe how we do the science. So I think a lot of the discussion after late breaking 1 was about the fact that only 20% of the patients in that trial were women. Really, we want to see better representation, and it's not just women, it's underserved communities and minority populations. So that's going to be hopefully a huge driver of change. And the other piece is patient-reported outcomes. We've always been very, very focused on outcomes that are measurable, of interest to clinicians, but there's certainly a shift towards outcomes that matter most to patients.
And I want to share one other thing I was really excited about today, and that is the early career folks. I walked through the poster sessions and just saw it was vibrant. People were sharing ideas, talking, and this is the future scientist. The other part is just right around the corner. We were in the membership lounge talking about sort of careers in cardiology. People were talking about, you know, what makes people happy, what are the things that keep you grounded. I mean, these were really important topics to hear from people that have had long careers in different places. So it's not just about, there's science and there's career development as well happening here, critical for the next generation of our researchers.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a fantastic day, and this is only day one, so there is more to come back for tomorrow. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.